Started. So hello, and great to have all of you here who might be watching on our YouTube channel. So I'm here with Ed Waters, Alfie Schrank, Geraldine Lipke, Dorothy Magnuson, and the incomparable Jeannie Jeske. We don't know if Roger will also be joining us, but anyway. So today we're going to be looking at Exodus 12 and 13. Not the entire chapter of either one, but I want us to take a look there. And sometimes it's helpful to just do a quick check now. What does your I'm guessing most of us, our Bible will have a heading. You know, that's from the editor of the version of the Bible. That's obviously added. But what does it say for some of you on the top of Exodus chapter 12?
Passover.
Okay.
That's what I got.
Yes. And then chapter 13, anything different or?
Yes. Consecration of the firstborn.
Lasting memorial.
Lasting memorial, okay.
And on the other one, I got firstborn shall die.
Ah,
Consecration of the firstborn is what I mine.
wow, okay.
This one on the bottom says the festival of unleavened bread.
Yeah, that's what mine has too, on 13.
Mm-hmm.
On 12, mine says the first Passover instituted. So, what does that mean to you? Or what does that make you think about? The first Passover instituted. Well, maybe let's just first of all say, what is Passover to us? What does that word mean, or what does that bring up in your mind?
Skip and go to the next.
Okay, you're going to pass over, yeah. Who or what was doing the passing over?
Oh, that's when they were leaving Egypt, right? And they were going to get ready to leave. And so they had this Passover.
Yeah.
Is that when they put the blood on the doors?
Yeah.
Right, and what was the purpose of that?
To skip over that child? Or,
Well,
To designate that this is a
Yeah.
Jewish household, or this is
Yeah.
a household of Israelites.
uh-huh.
So the angel of death was to pass over
Uh-huh.
those houses. And so this is the 10th and final plague. So we've jumped quite a ways from our difficult but also sort of fun story of Joseph forgiving his brothers and showing mercy, and things seemed relatively good at that point. And he was, because Joseph was the right hand of Pharaoh, right? So it was a pretty good situation. They were saved from the famine and so on and so forth. But I want you to go to, keep your finger on Exodus 12, or, use a piece of paper to stick that in there, and go to Exodus 1. Because we need to maybe set some historical context. How did we go from Joseph and his brothers? Hey, Julie.
hello. Sorry, everybody.
Good to have you. You could sit right there by Ed if you want, at the table.
I'm raising the mask. Where's Ed?
Right here.
Okay. I couldn't see you behind the mask.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. Instead of trying to lose weight, I'll just put my mask on all the time. Even when I'm home,
There you go.
when I get on the scale even.
So Julie Freeberg joined us, so welcome, hello.
Thank you. Do you have a
So-
Bible, Julie?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no, I don't have the Bible. I just think if I had my magnifying glass. If I look at that,
I'll grab another one.
So Exodus 1 picks up the scene from where we left off. And it starts out, "These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher." Do you see where I'm reading?
Yeah.
The total number of people born to Jacob was 70. Joseph was already in Egypt. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers, and that whole generation. But the Israelites were fruitful and prolific. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. All right. So, do you recall after the flood, God made a covenant with Noah? And what was one of the phrases that God used with Noah and his family? Maybe you don't recall, but it was, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the land," okay? And then the story of Abraham. Jeannie, do you remember from last week? What did God say to Abraham, or what was the scene that we talked about with the kids in jam after school? Abram was to
Oh, yeah, all the stars.
look up to the
Stars.
heavens and see if you can count the stars, and
Yeah.
so shall your descendants be, right? Okay, so now, verse 7, the Israelites were fruitful and prolific. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Wow, there's the fulfillment of these promises, okay, from Genesis. A couple, multiple times, that language of promise, and you shall become a great nation, and so forth. There's a problem, however. Who wants to read verse 8 and 9?
Then eventually a new king came to the throne of Egypt, who felt no obligation to the descendants of Joseph. He told his people, "These Israelites are becoming dangerous to us because there are so many of them."
Okay, and one more, sorry.
10.
Yeah.
Let's figure out a way to put an end to this. If we don't, and a war breaks out, they will join our enemies and fight against us and escape out of the country.
Okay, so it goes on to talk about how they basically enslaved the Israelite people. So the new Pharaoh arose. We don't know exactly how much time had passed, but it does say the whole generation of his descendants, that whole generation had died. And then they were fruitful and multiplied. So again, how many generations, we're not exactly sure. But then a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph, had no obligation, I think is how Ed's said it. No reason to think, oh, I should treat them well.
Yeah.
They became a threat. And so they were enslaved, all right? So what does God decide to do? Or who does God call to do something dramatic about this situation? Moses, exactly. So chapter 3, we hear Moses at the burning bush. And God tells him, I want you to go and say to Pharaoh, let my people go. And he has excuses. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? God says, I will be with you. This shall be the sign that I am with you. Okay? And then at verse 13, but again, Moses says, if I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? The divine name is revealed, this very mysterious name, I am who I am. Okay? So I always take that to be, you want to know who I am, watch what I do. I will be, sometimes, actually in the Hebrew, it can also be, I will be what I will be. It's all, like this futuristic, again, watch and see, you'll know me by my actions. And we say that all the time too, you shall know them by their fruits. You know, how do we discern what is good or right, true, what is wrong? Well, we discern. And so, then in verse 15, God also said to Moses, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this my title for all generations. Okay, we don't often refer to God using that title, do we? But for the Israelite people, that was critical, that this isn't some new God. This is the God that has been with them way back, called Abraham, and, has been with them through all the ups and downs of the, many, many generations, okay? So, there's some drama as Moses returns to Egypt. And I'm sure the story then of the first plagues, and how Moses shows his power, or God's power, I should say. Chapter 7, the first plague, water of the Nile River is turned to blood. So, this becomes I guess like a lot of fights, you might say, this gets personal. The God of the Israelites is basically warring with the God or gods of the Egyptians. Okay? And Moses is sort of the general, the one who's leading the fight, you might say, but it's on God's behalf. And so the gods of Egypt and Pharaoh, who was also seen as a god, this is, what's the first commandment? We don't, you shall have no other gods before me, right? So that's where, here there's these other gods, and they're basically agents of death, we might say. They're killing the Egyptian people, right? Why did Moses have to be put in the river in a basket?
Because they were killing them.
They were killing the firstborn. And when Pharaoh found out that that's not working, he said, kill them all. Not just the firstborn, kill all the new Israelite children. Okay? So you've heard the phrase, you reap what you sow. So when we come into chapter 12, these plagues, it's like, Pharaoh, you are reaping what you've sowed. You've sown death, and now death will come upon you. And that's really, I think, hard for us to hear or to kind of come to terms with in our, at least for me, it's like, but did that really mean that all these innocent children had to die? It's kind of like, whoa, what kind of God would do that? And I think those are legitimate things we have to struggle with. But I just wanted to get into some of that background, and now let's go to chapter 12 and hear more about this Passover, the kind of, I might say, the straw that broke Pharaoh's back, the camel's back. Dorothy, would you maybe start there, please?
The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, "This month is to be your first month, the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household is too small for the whole lamb, they must share one with their nearest neighbor, having taken into account of the number of people that are there. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with each person will eat. The animals you chose must be year-old males without defects, and you may take them from the sheep or the goats."
Okay, pause there, thanks. So, if this causes you to scratch your head, if you don't know the context, it's like, wait, what are we doing, God? We're to mark this as the beginning of the months. It shall be the first month of the year, so like New Year's Day. And we're to take a lamb, but if we can't afford one, maybe we go in on one together. But so far, we might be scratching our heads and going, to what end? Where are we going with this idea, God? It's kind of like, okay, your lamb shall be without blemish, a year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. Okay. Jeannie, do you want to continue at 6, please?
You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month. Then the whole assembled congregation of Israel shall slaughter it at twilight. They shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the lamb that same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted over the fire with its head, legs, and inner organs. You shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn.
Okay, pause again. So we're getting a little more clarity on what this whole lamb, what are we to do with this lamb? We are to slaughter it, and then take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses. Again, and then we're to eat the lamb. And what are we to eat it with? I think that's kind of interesting and significant. Verse 8.
Unleavened bread?
Unleavened bread. Why would it be unleavened bread? What causes bread to...
Well, you don't have time to raise it if you use yeast, or it would be unleavened bread, you can bake right away.
be flat?
Yeah.
I think of like pita bread or something, Like when we go to the Boundary Waters canoeing, we don't really want leavened bread because it'll get smashed in our pack. So we might bring something that's unleavened, right? Still tastes pretty good, but it is very different because there isn't time. So there's something going on here that we need to kind of keep reading on and saying, okay, God, this seems like really curious plan, and still not sure where you're going with all this. But what is the other thing that they're to eat with the lamb and the unleavened bread?
Bitter herbs.
Now, have any of you ever had a Seder meal or celebrated Passover?
What did you call
Seder.
I've heard that word before, but no, I
I
haven't.
think we did that here once,
Yeah.
quite a while ago, but I don't remember
Yeah.
much about it.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago.
So as we'll go further in, we'll learn maybe a little bit more about some of these traditions. I think that is covered in chapter 13. But where are they again? The people who are being given this instruction?
Where are they?
Yeah,
Like
They're in
home.
Egypt.
they're in Egypt.
Yeah,
Oh,
And what's their situation in Egypt right now?
they're getting ready to leave
Getting ready to leave. Why?
because they're being persecuted.
They're being persecuted. They're being oppressed. They're slaves. This is really bitter. okay? So the bitter herbs are a reminder of the bitter time and the bitter lives that they were leading, okay? So this is going to be, a remembrance, so that they, they don't forget, okay? And we'll hear more about that as we go a little further in.
Is part of this in the Jewish celebration of holidays now? These are the X. What's going on?
This is it says the first Passover instituted. So we hear about Passover, and usually on our calendars, you'll see something about, Passover begins, and it's generally around the time of Easter. Some years it's really close, some years, because they are following a lunar calendar, I believe, and, we have, of course, like 30 and 31 days, and so it doesn't always line up just so. But anyway, so yeah, this is like they've been celebrating this for what, thousands of years, okay? And we'll hear more about that. But this is I think kind of a curious way that God talks to Moses. Again, going back to the very first verse of this chapter. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt. Okay, so these instructions are being given to, we might say, the two head honchos. Okay, and they need to spread the word. They need to, obviously this is preparation for what God is about to do. Okay, so picking up then at verse 11, Geraldine.
This is how you are to eat it, with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste, it is the Lord's Passover. On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both men and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt.
Okay. Wow is right. Yes. Now we get the whole now it's making sense. Now we understand, why are we to get this lamb or this goat? Why should it be without blemish? Why should we, eat of it and do this and do that? Well, because guess what? I'm gonna do something dramatic on that night. Verse 12, I will pass through the land of Egypt, and I will strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both human beings and animals. On all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. So I try to stress with our confirmation kids over and over that when we're talking about God, Yahweh, the Creator, our Father, however you want to refer to, capital G, it is God's name. When we're talking about gods, false gods, the gods of Egypt, they get no respect, right? We don't capitalize that word there. And if any of your Bibles have it capitalized, just, it'll be like, editor, what were you doing? That's not right. No, I wouldn't imagine any of these translations would do that. But so that goes back to what I was saying before, that this is a very harsh punishment, but it's also because they were sowing death, these other gods. Now, you might say this is their comeuppance. This is their it's time for their judgment.
But how would that be fair to do? Take all the Egyptians and kill them. I mean, it's like saying, not to get political here, but, like, we don't all want Trump or Biden or whatever, so then you are all gonna die. But in my household, there's discrepancy. So why could, maybe some of these Egyptians felt like the Israelites. They believed in their God. Would God still destroy them?
So you're asking a huge, challenging question, and of course, there are no easy answers, and
Well, that's why I don't feel like he really did kill all of the firstborn in Egypt. Because I don't feel like some of those families were believing in what Pharaoh wanted them. Some of them did believe like the Israelites did.
yeah, I mean, who's to say, right? I mean, we're not able to judge people's hearts. But it is this whole idea that, I don't think I can't imagine that there were Egyptians who somehow thought, I kind of like your God, Israelites, more than my own Pharaoh. I don't think it was like there was some kind of two-party system or something like that. It was like, you're Egyptian, you better believe the Pharaoh is God, or,
He had
again,
quite a variety of gods, so, you should be able to pick one.
yeah,
You know what
you
I'm
had a
saying?
sun
They had
god, you had a
sun
this,
god,
and you
yeah.
had a that, but Pharaoh himself was seen as a god.
Yeah.
All right, so it is on these people that the judgments are carried out, and I've heard the analogy, and I think it's worth sharing, because there are other times in the Old Testament where they have holy wars, and God says, I want you to wipe out all of the Amorites, let's say, or all of the Jebusites, or whoever. And we sit here and go, is that right? Is that fair? That just sounds so vengeful. But it's sort of like, and this is the analogy, it's like, if you don't cut out all of the cancer, when someone has a cancer, like, I'm just going to take a little bit. What's the cancer going to do? Cancer's going to laugh and go, well, you didn't do nothing. I'm going to keep spreading and infecting this whole body till I kill it, till I destroy it. You got to cut it all out. And it's like, really? But that's what we've learned, is that cancer is relentless. Sometimes people may, in their old age, develop a cancer and they'll end up dying from something else before the cancer kills them. But cancer is just not going to say, well, you're a pretty good person, I'll just stop growing now in your body. Occasionally we have like these sort of miraculous, they're cancer free. How did that happen? Well, so there are sometimes those mysteries, but generally you have to go in and you have to cut it all out. And I think that's kind of where this is. And our sentiments are, but that just doesn't feel right, And so there is in the, I believe it's the Talmud. So Jewish people have, of course, the what we call the Old Testament. They have all these books, and then they have commentary that has been saved and written down over the generations. And one of the comments or commentary that people often go back to is that even though they celebrate Passover, they shouldn't be too uppity about it, because this has caused people pain. I mean, people's lives were lost. People were killed, okay, for your redemption. So don't, just be like, ha ha, look at what our God did to you, Pharaoh, and your son. So it's basically, for us to just sort of take a step back and realize we still need to be merciful. We don't want to be, this is God's action. We can't claim that I am the hand of God, or so anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's at least, again, wow, there's a lot to ponder there or take in. So as we said, we'll stop at 13 here, verse 13, and go on to chapter 13. But it ends with, the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you live. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. So God is the one speaking here. But we understand that God sent an angel or there was someone who carried this out on God's behalf. We talk about it as the angel of death, I guess, but it's still, a story of salvation, redemption, being saved from the land of Egypt, which has now become awful and bitter and harsh. All right, so I'll just say verse 14, and then we'll go on to the next chapter. But this day shall be a day of remembrance for you. You shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall observe it as a perpetual ordinance. So what do we do? What do we do to make a day of remembrance? What are some of our days of remembrance that are on our calendars?
Christmas, Easter.
Good Friday.
No, we could go there, but I'm thinking of like other festivals, other things that are on our calendar that are not necessarily the Christian calendar.
Lent?
No, not the Christian calendar.
Oh,
Well, the schools always remember 9/11.
Okay.
Martin Luther King.
Yeah, Day of Remembrance, right? We wanna commemorate that. We don't want to just think of it like any other day.
Lincoln's birthday, Washington's birthday, I suppose, all of those, huh?
Veterans Day,
Yeah.
4th of July.
right? 4th of July, what does that commemorate? Why is that a day of remembrance?
Yeah. Our independence.
Yep, signing of the Declaration of Independence. Now, it didn't mean that because they signed it on that day that they immediately had independence. But we celebrate it that way. So you have Cinco de Mayo. What's that? May 5th. It celebrates the liberation of Mexico. Sitten de Mai.
That's Norwegian, ain't it?
No, Scandinavian, for the Woodville.
Sitten de Mai. That's a commemoration. Again, so we have lots of these days of remembrance, things on our own calendars that we celebrate because we don't want to treat them like any other day. This is something sacred. This is something holy. And when I talk to the kids about, we say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Well, hallowed means holy, sacred, and that whole idea is set apart for a special purpose. So these days of remembrance are holy days, holidays, right? We don't think of it when we say, I'm going to take a holiday. The root of that is a holy day. It's a day that you are setting apart. You're setting it aside for something special, sacred, holy. Anyway, So this is certainly that day for them. Julie, did you have?
I was thinking, I keep hearing about these holidays, or whatever the Jewish faith celebrates, and we don't. And I'm thinking, we do ours like Santa Maya. I suppose that's the same thing. Yeah. Another group that are celebrating their freedom, or their happiness, their successes in their lifestyles.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, how come we don't celebrate what the Jews are? I guess we are celebrating.
Yeah, we do it. I mean, we ought to, or we could, I think. Again, I find it sort of uplifting or useful to learn more about other cultures and what is it that you celebrate. Oh, that's interesting, and sometimes people will say, we're having a Seder meal, do you want to come? They'll actually invite you to participate. And I mean, we have some Jewish friends, and they invited us one time for like Hanukkah, where they light the candles, and Hanukkah's a whole nother sort of holiday, day of remembrance, very different from Passover, but very different, but also there's a lot of those kinds of celebrations that are good for us to learn about and perhaps gain greater appreciation for our own roots and our own story. Yeah.
I think those celebrations are very nice if you do it with your family background.
Mm-hmm.
It's a celebration because you want to know where you came from too.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to carry on in your family priorities,
Yeah. I mean, if
I could go to a lot of them then.
well, sure, yeah. I mean, if someone comes here from another country and we're all celebrating July 4th, and they're a new citizen, do we say, well, this isn't for you? No, I mean, they're probably going to want to participate in that celebration because now I'm a U.S. citizen, or now I'm living in this country. So, yeah, you don't, I don't think you want to denigrate other people's cultural history, and you want to learn, I would at least want to learn about it and like I said, grow in appreciation. Well, anyway, chapter 13, we're just going to look at the first 8 verses, and this is now Moses talking to the people. Well, the first verse is God speaking again, but then it shifts gears to Moses doing the teaching, okay? So, Alfie, do you want to read 13, verse 1 and 2, please?
Okay. The Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me every firstborn male, the first offspring of every womb among the Israelites belongs to me, whether man or animal."
Okay. So the verb there is consecrate to me, which again means to set it aside and to treat it special with maybe greater honor. Consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among Israelites. Both human beings and animals, which is interesting again. We don't generally think in those terms, but so this law to consecrate Israel's human and animal firstborn, my Bible, the study Bible says, is juxtaposed, set alongside with the slaying of Egypt's firstborn. And this comes up again in chapter 34, in Deuteronomy chapter 15, and then there's an elaboration of this parallel in Numbers. So numerous times this idea of the firstborn being really important and valuable in God's eyes is talked about and told, lifted up. So let's go on then, unless there's any question on that or anything, but let's go to the, now Moses saying to the people, okay? Go back to you, Ed.
You going to exclude Geraldine?
Did I?
Yeah, I did, I read.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
I thought so.
Then Moses said to the people, "This is a day to remember forever, the day of leaving Egypt and your slavery. For the Lord has brought you out of the mighty miracles. Now remember, during the annual celebration of this event, you are to use no yeast. Don't even have any in your homes. Mark this day of your exodus as the end of March each year, when Jehovah brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites and Amorites and all the rest of the boys, the land he promised your fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey."
Okay.
Would you keep
Yeah,
going?
yeah, no, that's good. All right, stop there. So at verse 5. So, yeah, we're just going to look at the first 8 verses. So that's a good place to break.
What is the deal about the not having yeast in this? It's just nothing with yeast. Why is that?
You can't have yeast?
Yeah, it says here,
Yeah.
eat nothing containing yeast.
Yeah.
Well.
It goes back to...
Unleavened,
It goes back to chapter 12,
So the first,
what we heard in verse 8, and then actually we left off right where it talks about this a little further in chapter 12, verse 15. It says, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th shall be cut off from Israel. On the first day you shall hold a solemn assembly, and on the 7th day a solemn assembly. No work shall be done in those days, only what everyone must eat. So it's this
kind of a
festival of unleavened bread
festival.
to just make sure everyone understands and is reminded.
Is it just symbolic though? Does it mean anything? Is it like Catholics don't eat meat on Fridays?
It seems to be, I mean, I don't know enough of the Jewish tradition, but it seems that way to me. It's like, just remember, and don't ever, mess up on this, because God wants us to keep it holy, sacred, set apart. Again, we're teaching the 10 Commandments to the confirmation kids right now. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Set aside a day for rest and Sabbath and time with God.
It almost reminds me of like it's a rule. So like God said to do that. Like when He said, told Adam and Eve, don't eat the apple. So I mean, it's almost like testing again.
Yeah, are you gonna follow God's will and God's commands, or are you gonna follow your own ways?
I ask one of the girls here, what is the yeast?
Yeast. What is yeast?
Yeah, what is it really?
It's what raises the bread.
Well, I know that. I know that's what raises the bread.
I don't know where it's
I mean, what I was getting at is there something in the ingredients of it,
I
or
don't know.
you had to take it out of the house even, or I'm just
It does create some kind of chemical reaction.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll
And-
accept that and just let it go. I didn't mean to stir up the pot there, but I'm just saying that I thought maybe they related that to something that was unholy or whatever. I don't know.
It's like it's life into the bread.
Yeah.
And the yeast, and they wanted to be calm now, and just unleavened.
Okay.
Soak up the rules.
Yeah, we'll have to reflect more about that. But so this is there's a looking back here that Moses is talking about. And what is it that they are to remember? Verse 3?
The day they came out of Egypt.
Yes, out of the house of slavery. And how did God do that?
With parting of the Red Sea.
Red Sea, right?
With Moses.
No.
Oh,
Well, this is, I think this is talking, again, it's about that, but it's also even before that is the festival, the Passover. I think it's still referring to that, because they haven't left yet. I think that's, that'll be chapter 14, crossing the Red Sea. But, so it's looking back to saying how by the strength of God's hand, through this Passover, God brought them out. And today, in the month of Abib, you are going out. So, I always try to help kids remember, like, Exodus means what? And they're like, and I go, what do we have over every door in a public building? There's a sign in red letters that says exit. This is about the exit from slavery and bondage and oppression.
Egypt.
But then there's this future part that Moses is talking about. When the Lord brings you into the land, so future, Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, Jebusites, which he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey. What are you to do?
Don't eat unleavened bread.
Remember this day. Remember this powerful thing that God did by the strength of God's hand. So keep the observance, even though, you might think, that was so long ago. Sometimes we'll say, like, God, what have you done for me lately? It's like, just remember, that was pretty awesome. Don't ever forget that, right? What are we doing for time? Okay, good. So again, 7 days. I'm at verse 6. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there shall be a festival to the Lord. Okay. Julie, do you want to finish us out with verses 7 and 8?
I don't know that I can see it.
Okay.
I'll listen.
The print is small and your glasses are fogged up. I know that feeling. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen in your possession. No leaven shall be seen among you in all your territory. You shall tell your child on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. Really? This is futuristic. This is like when you are now in the land of Canaan, the land of milk and honey, the promised land that God swore to you, you are to say and tell your child on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt? Do you find that curious? This is generations later. Moses is telling them, you are still participating in this amazing thing that God did. You are a participant. This isn't just, oh yeah, that was something that God did way, 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 way back for somebody. I don't know. No, God did it for you. You wouldn't be here today if God hadn't done this, so we have something similar in our liturgy. Maybe I've shared this with you guys before, or at least some people. Not sure if I did in a Bible study, but before we have communion, the pastor will either say or chant, "The Lord be with you." And also with you. Lift up your hearts. Lift them up to the Lord. What? What does that mean? It means you are now stepping out of ordinary time, chronology, right? The events follow one after another, second after second, minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day. No, lift up your hearts. We lift them up to the Lord. We are going to, right now, step out of time. This is a kairos moment, is how the Greeks would call it. Have you heard of that word before?
Mm-hmm.
Kairos is time outside of time. We want that right now because we in communion want to participate with all the saints. It's as though we are there at the supper that Jesus instituted at Passover meal with his disciples. On the night in which he was betrayed, our Lord Jesus took bread. We are there in this kairos moment, this time outside of time. And that's what is being talked about here, too. Tell your child, it is because of what God did for me. When I was delivered out of Egypt, I am a participant in celebrating Passover, the festival of unleavened bread. I'm not just recalling something. I am there. I am with them. I'm going to eat the bread. I'm going to take these bitter herbs because I want to feel that. It's that powerful. For them, this moment of salvation, deliverance, and that's what we need. When we celebrate communion, it is saying we are being delivered from sin and death and the devil. And, there's nothing to compare to that, right? Anyway, I didn't expect to get emotional about that, but
It is very, I'm glad you shared it.
it is profound.
It is.
It's why in the New Testament there's this statement about, don't take communion lightly or flippantly or, and because it's a holy thing. It's a sacred thing. And if we just go, throw me some bread, or I'll just have a cracker and any old wine will do, or whatever you got, it's like, no. We want it to be so meaningful. And if we can have a sense, of closeness with how they celebrated, whether that be through the unleavened bread, through actual wine, through a common cup. We don't, again, do it in the way that they would have, which it says they were reclining at table. We don't actually reenact the Lord's Supper in that way. But sometimes on Monday, Thursday, we try to get a little more, close or connected with it in that way. But anytime we celebrate. So, again, that's the Passover connection. Our Eucharist is a meal of thanksgiving. A thanksgiving for God's deliverance, just as Passover is for them. So,
I think I mentioned it once before. When I was overseas and it came time for the Passover. Of course, there wasn't that big of or at least anyway, anyone that wished to go on the coast itself and participate in the Passover was welcome to do it, because that kind of a service wasn't offered where we were at, okay? And I knew a couple guys that were Jewish, and they were very, very pleased at that time, to be able to participate in their religion and their
absolutely,
beliefs.
yeah. It'd be, I'm sure really interesting to be able to maybe sit down with them and participate, or to ask them questions about it afterward. I bet that was pretty meaningful for you. Tell me more. You know, and did you have any special celebrations of Passover that you did with your family before you came here into the service? You know, it'd be like us telling about the great, you know, Christmas we had, or what we do at Easter dinner, or, you know, I mean, like, they probably have some poignant stories that they'd be happy to share, I would think. But so yeah, or maybe, you know, for us it would be like, well, when is the time that you took communion that you still recall and go, oh yeah, that time, that was really meaningful. I mean, how many times have we taken communion in our lives? You know, hundreds, 1,000, you know, but there still are some that we say, ooh, yeah, that one, I still recall because of the setting, because of who you were with, because of what was going on in your life. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons. But anyway, we are at about time. So why don't we close with prayer, and yeah, then we'll be on our way. Well, God, we give you thanks for these amazing stories that we find in Scripture, especially this story of the first Passover, how you delivered your people from oppression and slavery, and you continue to do that for us and with us. And so we give you thanks as we celebrate the sacrament of Holy Communion, but we also pray that we would grow in our appreciation of the many diverse cultures and celebrations that are holy days, days set apart to remember and to give thanks. So be with us as we go forth from this time, walking in your ways. In Jesus' name, amen.